If you'd welcome up here, Greg Fettig.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor for me to be here because, like most of you, I am a Tea Party activist. That's what I am politically. I got in the movement in 2009, probably for the same reasons you guys did. I think our country is very close to not being as we know it much longer. So in 2009, April, I went to my first Tea Party rally and then just got more vocal. I was very outspoken as it was, but I became emboldened by the possibility of what I saw at my first rally. Went to Washington in September 2009, and met 1 million people that were friends that I didn't know I had until that day. And with that, I took it to ground running and formed a Tea Party group like most of you guys did. There was no manual in the Tea Party. I didn't know what to do or how to do it. I just went on my gut instincts, and that was for me to go to Washington as often as I could and meet my friends. And Friends being conservative organization, I knew the problems that we face by and large are from Washington. They're created by politicians, but there's also good allies there. Among them, Freedom Works, Americans for Prosperity, the Club for Growth. I reached out to them and got contact and became friends and got to know their staff. And I thought that might be important one day in Indiana. I can bring it back to Indiana, and hopefully they could help us in knowledge and training. Really not resources at that time, but just know-how. Little did I know at that time it was going to be very pivotal and important in what we did in 2012, May 8th. In 2010, Indiana had a U.S. Senate race. Our Democrat Senator Evan Bayh announced his retirement, and that opened that seat up for whoever wanted to run. We had 5 candidates that were Republicans. Our former Senator Dan Coates announced he was going to run again. The establishment was behind him, and we had 4 other people that challenged as well. So 5 candidates in that field. 2 of them were actually Tea Party people, but the Tea Party as a whole split their vote 4 ways, and Senator Coates won our primary with 39% of the vote and went on to win the election. Now, we were called ineffective. The media said, you guys are dead, you don't know what you're talking about. There's really no real movement in Indiana. And to some degree, they were right. We were there, but we didn't know what we were doing. In June of that, 3 weeks after the primary, the Washington Post called me out of the blue. I'm not sure why, but they called me and they asked me, at that time then, Senator Lugar had asked or announced he was going to vote for Elena Kagan for confirmation of the U.S. Supreme Court, having already voted the year before for Sotomayor. In August, they called a lady named Monica Boyer, a Tea Party activist in northern Indiana. When Lugar said he actually did carry through the vote, Fox News asked her, and she essentially said the same thing. He will be a target of the Tea Party. That's what I had said in June. Now, we were speaking for ourselves, but we knew the movement and the sentiment was our senator had to go. So you fast forward to October of that year, 2010. Monica had heard about me. I had heard about her, but our paths hadn't crossed. So a few days before the general election, she called me and said, Greg, what do you think about working together, taking out Senator Lugar? I said, sure, but do you mean vote him out? And when she assured me that's exactly what she meant, I said, sure, because that's going to be the sentiment of the Tea Party. Yes, we all want to remove Senator Lugar from power. Again, we lost a big race in May of 2010 because we didn't unite. So we were given a very rare opportunity to learn from our mistakes. And our mistake was we did not unite and work for one candidate. So the idea was, can we unite the Tea Party in Indiana? Now, that was simple, right? 85 groups, yeah, we're all going to work together, get along. No, it had never been done in the country before. In fact, we didn't know there were 85 groups at the time. Tea Party was a little over a year old. So we did a quick demographic. I called people I knew. Everyone called who they knew. Quickly, we found out there was over 80 groups representing 25,000 Tea Party activists in Indiana. So the idea was, we learned from our mistake in 2010. We had one goal. This wasn't an all-encompassing thing that is totally contrary for the Tea Party. 1 or 2 people telling the whole Tea Party what to do. That was never going to work. So we had a singular goal, and that was defeat Senator Lugar. We had to have broad representation, too. If it was just me trying to run it, or just Monica, or just us, too, it wouldn't work either because people, that's a top-down structure. So we had a broad representation, and we balanced our Tea Party committee into 9 of our congressional districts. So we had 9 representatives throughout the state. And in my District 5, I had 12 Tea Party groups in that district. So it was my job to work with them, keep them on board, keep their eye on the prize, and that was defeat Lugar. Well, that was in 2010, October. Fast forward, January 2011, Senator Lugar announced his re-election campaign, publicly stating it was the earliest he ever had to do that. Well, he was reacting to what we were about to do to him, and that was to defeat him. A month later, Richard Mourdock came along, and he announced his candidacy, and he was the first that we thought would be many. I mean, it was going to be, everyone saw Lugar might be right for the taking, so the odds are there'd be more people involved. It actually didn't happen. I think there was a little providence there, but I also think our efforts, we didn't do anything to prevent people from getting in the race. I mean, I respect everyone's right to run for office if they're legally qualified. But what lesser candidates realized over the course of what we were doing is we were going to unite behind one. And if we had to go to a caucus and narrow it down to one, we were prepared to do that. We pledged to do that. So we set up our leadership. Essentially, Monica and I were the ones that came up with the idea, just like any of you in your groups. Whoever came up with the idea to start a group was usually one of the leaders. It was that simple. But then we had to have that board or that committee, and those were the total 9 representatives. And when we asked this in front of the leaders of all the Tea Parties, we also offered to step down ourselves if our people in our district wanted us to go. And none of them in the districts of the 4 original, they didn't ask us to step down. They, in fact, encouraged us to continue. We had administration support. Kristen Miner is one of many people that were behind the scenes that didn't get any credit, but really they did a lot of the hard work. They did stuff you'll never get credit for, but the administrative, organizing rallies, sign waves, and so forth. And then we just broke it down. Besides our regional reps, we eventually wound up with 92 county coordinators, 1 for every county in the state. We enlisted all the Tea Parties in the 9-12 groups. Other states, in fact, Darren, Reboot Congress, he was one of our best allies out of St. Louis. So, and he was just one of many, because if we were going to win this race, we'd have to do it with friends wherever we could find them, and they weren't going to be confined to Indiana. We had just citizens that would not necessarily call themselves Tea Party people, but they sympathized with this. Of those 25,000 Tea Party activists, we found that each one of them had a minimum of 10 people in their circle of influence. If we could harness that, we had a potential voting bloc of 250,000 people. In fact, Mourdock won our primary with 248,000 votes. So you tell me, maybe that was, it was extrapolated to be the same thing. Well, we were going after the GOP candidates. 6-term senator going for his 7th. Our governor supported him, the state GOP supported him. Everyone supported him. Now, our guy, Richard Mourdock, was Republican, but he wasn't on the top of the hierarchy. So we had pros and cons by going against the GOP. And one of my favorite pros is we invoked the wrath of the GOP. That was kind of fun. One of the cons was we invoked the wrath of the GOP. They came after us. One of the best stories in the campaign, although it wasn't particularly fun at the time, 1 month after we met Senator Lugar in December of 2010, he came to us and wanted to meet us when he found out what we were doing. That right there was a red flag. He knew he was in trouble. We knew he was in trouble. 1 month later, a couple days before our unity meeting, a man worth $4 billion called me, flew in from Washington, and tried to bribe me not to do this. And when that happened, I thought, these guys are scared. I'm nobody. I mean, I'm just an ordinary citizen, and you don't get called by every day to meet with a billionaire. So I knew these guys were in trouble. We had independence by not working with them. We had no rules. That's one of my favorites. No rules. I can get along with that. I mean, that's my style. We didn't have to subscribe on any way of anyone telling us this is how you run a campaign. We ran a campaign how we felt it ought to be, just common sense. We encompassed as large a voting bloc as we could, so it wasn't just Tea Party people, it was conservatives. Many cases, there were Democrats involved and helped us out. So now no one would argue, well, they want him out because they want a new guy, their guy. Didn't matter at that time because we had to beat him to get our guy. And if we hadn't won the primary, we were done. We couldn't get our guy across the finish line in November. He wouldn't have been a candidate. We have no financial resources. I don't have to tell you the Tea Party by and large has no money. We were constantly opposed by everyone in the GOP, those hardcore followers that are going to vote GOP no matter what, and they're going to go vote for the guy, the establishment. And they didn't take us seriously at first, not publicly, but behind the scenes. Again, when the billionaire comes in, they're taking you seriously. 1 month after that, the Japanese embassy from Washington, D.C. called us. They too flew to Indianapolis, asked us what we were doing. They didn't understand. Why would you take a conservative out? So he's not conservative, he's a Republican. There's a difference. And they were worried about how that would upset their world because there's 200 plus Japanese manufacturing companies in Indiana, and they don't like change. So it wasn't a threat, but it was definitely, people were taking notice. Next slide. Okay. Okay, in January of 2011, 3 months after our idea, we got 160 leaders from around the state. These are leaders, not just members of those 80-some Tea Party. And we met in a church. We had a 3-hour meeting, pitched our idea, and after the end of 3 hours, they signed a unity pledge that yes, they would not only embrace what was we were planning, but they would actively support and campaign for it. And that was the first step. If we hadn't achieved that, we were done. The night of the primary, we had a lot of friends, we had personalities, we had egos, we had detractors. The guy on the right that I'm shaking his hand, Harley guy, he makes me look small. That guy you wouldn't have thought was conservative. He became one of my best friends and best allies in it. The one on the right or left, that's the rhinoceros, as you know, and we were going after a rhino. Interesting thing, those birds, you know what those are? They're called oxpeckers. I didn't know that. I Googled that and I always thought, why are those birds on that on any rhinoceros? There's a symbiotic relationship that exists between the bird and the beast. The bird keeps the beast parasite-free, ticks, lice, larvae. In return, the rhino tolerates them and is better because he's free of pests, parasite. Well, there are the human analogy or equivalency of that. And Lugar, any rhino, has oxpeckers following them. After 36 years, he was a cottage industry all of himself. Lawyers, lobbyists, six-figure income staffers, everybody did not want us to beat him because their meal ticket was going to get punched. And I'm telling you, when you upset an oxpecker, they are angry and they'll come after you. I'm sorry, can you guys hear me? Okay. We had to keep our eye on the prize, and that to continue forward on what we were doing. And 18 months was a long campaign, but we had to do that to get the momentum going and to beat him. We couldn't just do it in 6 months or a year, which most campaigns typically will go. Mourdock was a little over a year. So our ultimate goal was to retake the country, claim it back. But to do it, we had to beat the GOP, and that was Lugar. In September last year, we maintained that unity by and large throughout what going on a year. We had a convention. It was supposed to be a straw poll or a caucus. Nobody else came forward. That was a blessing, but again, I think we kept some of that from happening. So we had a convention, straw poll, and a vote to 96-1. Richard Mourdock won over Lugar. I think the one vote guy made a mistake and checked the wrong box, but that was the delegates, right, or the district reps, all 9 of them, and that was Richard Mourdock accepting not only the winning the straw poll, but our endorsement of Hoosiers for Conservative Senate, which gave tacit endorsement of the Tea Party as a whole being behind it. And with that, we kicked in our fall campaign seriously, then began campaign mode. Most campaigns, and Richard was no different, they had a pretty much traditional campaign. Campaign manager, communication director, grassroots coordinators, which you're seeing more and more of that in most campaigns. They had regional reps and they had county coordinators. But what we did, we had that and then more, really, because our grassroots were, on average, 60 Tea Parties held with us through the whole process. We never got less than 60 people, or groups. We had, of those 25,000 potential activists, we found we had about 10,000 that were actually doing the work and staying with the process from day one and through the primary. We also had an 800-pound gorilla called Freedom Works. We reached out to them, we solicited their help, they watched us, and when we had our straw poll, they saw we stayed united for nearly a year. 3 weeks later, they came in and endorsed Richard Mourdock, and they provided us $600,000 in get out the vote material to wage a ground war. A couple signs. The one on the left is a Retire Lugar, one of my favorites. That was a Freedom Works sign. The one on the right was one of Mourdock's campaign signs from their campaign. But if you look to the left, he had the traditional phone bank systems that usually are site specific. You have to go in, make the phone calls. Nothing wrong with that. But ours was even better because you could do that out of the comfort of your own home, on your own time. Some people need encouragement, and group settings are fun. We could arrange those too. But if I wanted to come home after beating up on them all day, I still could make 100 calls or so. They made 100,000 calls. We combined with Freedom Works made over 300,000. They had yard signs, 30,000. We had 20,000. They went door to door. We went door to door with GPS systems, walking maps, smartphones. I could pull up my smartphone. I could go to any door that was a Republican super voter. I knew where they were. I knew how to get there. I don't know how many volunteers they had, but we had a potential army of well over 20,000. We had, as I said, actively involved 10,000. Nobody can put those numbers, Democrat or Republican, combined in a race in Indiana. Our strategy was we have to have weekly calls, strategy calls with the leadership, constant interaction with the Tea Party. Early on, we had some groups that didn't join in, but meeting with them, talking to them, eventually we brought them in because they understood what we were really trying to do. It wasn't for fame or fortune because you're not getting it. I'd say we got notoriety and we almost went broke in the process because we were spending our own money to do this. We had to nationalize the race, and we did that by reaching out early to the media. And some of my best media contacts were ones you probably don't like as Tea Party people, the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, among others, but they reported accurately. We developed relationships with them, and those reporters are human beings. They may be liberal, but as you get to know them, they generally treat you fair. So that was effective use of the media. And then we had alliances wherever we could. I reached out to Club for Growth early, and they said, we'll think about it. They got in February, 15 months after we started, but they put in $1.7 million in the race, and that helped. Okay, detractors. If I said not one Tea Party, nobody conservative attacked us, I wouldn't be doing you a service. We had 3 groups in Indiana, and they became known as the Toxic Trio. They were Tea Party people, and they were not content in just saying, no, I don't want to do this. And we offered them a seat, one of them a representative seat, to be a part of it. They not only said no, they were as vicious as Lugar's people. They did everything they could do to undermine us, and although they supported Mourdock, I'll let you come to your own conclusions why they might have done that, but they waged smear campaigns in the media, false allegations. 2 of those 3 parties, Tea Party groups, are now no longer in existence, so most people saw them for what they were. You have to call people out. Now, if they just said, thanks, no thanks, good luck, I'm okay with that. You can't be everything to everybody. However, when it's the same guy they're supporting, they were hurting our efforts because we brought in eventually, as I said, $600,000 to Richard Mourdock through our efforts. It brought Freedom Works. That's not counting anyone else that came in because we softened the target. Freedom Works is poised to spend $1 million in the race this fall. So if they had blown up what we were trying to do, Richard wouldn't have won. So it's that simple. Another thing, you have to recognize the talents of everyone that wanted to get involved, to keep 60+ groups on it and believing in what you said, plus utilizing them. You have to decide find out what their talents were. Everyone has weaknesses, everyone has strengths. So we utilized that, assigned roles to people, and let them work. And they bought into what we were trying to do. They took ownership, and they became very good allies to the cause. In fact, one of them took 6 months to get his group of 600 on board. He said, Greg, I didn't like you. He said, but honestly, I didn't know you. I hadn't met you. I hadn't given you the benefit of the doubt. He said, you shaved your head. I thought you were a union thug. And he's become a wonderful dear friend, and he remains to be. And he said, I just had lunch with him a couple weeks ago. He said, I just didn't believe that working together. I thought we should just work alone. But the odds of 60, 80 Tea Party group looking at that point down there, and that point's May 8, 2012, all wanting to beat Lugar, but all going it alone, that we would all arrive at the same place at the same time with the same result, were slim to none. We had to coordinate and cooperate to work collectively together. Our secret was we united. This is what we had when we did this. On the left was some of our early support. On the right, that was some of the late support. They all helped. But none of them would have got in the race if we hadn't softened the target. By and large, we were alone for almost a year before anybody helped us. And so who won the race? The Tea Party won the race. And when we were doing this, it became apparent to me that we're taking on a big endeavor. And if we were to win, or if we were successful, it wouldn't be Greg Fettig beat Lugar. It wouldn't be Monica Boyer. In fact, it wasn't going to be Hoosiers for Conservative Senate, and it wasn't going to be the Indiana Tea Party beat Senator Lugar. You know what the headlines were when we won? The Tea Party beat Senator Lugar. That's you guys, that's all of us. So we had a sense of a tremendous burden on us, because if we lost, it would also be the Tea Party once again is ineffective. But the simple fact of it, and when we won, this guy on the right is the member or the leader of the Australian Tea Party. His birthday's May 8th. He said, Greg, all I want for my birthday is the Lugar defeat. So I got a cartoon sent to me with he and I in it. So you know you're doing something right if you get to be a cartoon. Some of the people that we did, when we had all that media attention, the three that I mentioned, that was part of what they did not like. They did not like the attention. But I'm telling you, you have to talk to the media, and then early on I knew I had to, but I wasn't that comfortable with it. And at times you were out there, you're the point person, so you do get attacked. You get people coming after you, threats, the smears, but you have to step out of your comfort zone, and people can do that. I wasn't the only media person or talk to the media. Groups all around the state were getting interviews and exposés, so that was important, and it shouldn't have been an envy situation. It should have been welcomed, and most people did. A few didn't like it. Those are just a few of the headlines we had. If you Google what we did, there's hundreds of thousands of references. And again, it was always the Tea Party. It wasn't me, it wasn't Indiana, it was the Tea Party. That was nice. On the right, that's a Freedom Works staffer with us the night of the victory. To say he's happy would be an understatement. Had a wealth of information in 18 months, enough to write a book, and in fact I did. And there in the middle, that was in November last year, when Michigan Patriots took our model, implemented, united 55 Tea Party groups, and got a candidate. Now, they weren't successful. The candidate withdrew 2 weeks before their primary through his support to another candidate who lost. But I told them, you didn't lose. You succeeded because you put a structure in place that can be, if you don't let it fall apart, it'll live on to another day, another race. What we did and how we did it and what you can do in Missouri is simple. If you unite, you'll make history, and we did. We pulled off one of the biggest modern-day political upsets in the United States history. The world will listen. Not only did Australia call me, the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, Israel, people in Turkey, around the world, they sent congratulations. They were watching. They were watching what we're doing. There's an international Tea Party movement, and they took their inspiration from us. Hold strong, work together, and you can change the world. One of the things we did real quick, and I'm going to go through this real quick for time's sake. Are there any people that use Twitter? Quite a few. As I said, one of our best allies was Darren from St. Louis. He helped us. We had a lot of people come in tweeting for us, getting our message out. But the key to Twitter and why we use it is it's a social media that doesn't cost you anything, and you can get your message out, and you can actually wage a war with the opponent, and it's controlling the narrative. This is Kristen's account. She's at Julia Ward Howe, who, if you know your history, Julia Ward wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic. She has 939 followers, or I'm sorry, following. She has 347 people following her, and she's only been on it actively for what, a month? About a month. So it's basically typing in a box. You have 140 characters. Can you do a tweet right now? Okay, I'm sorry, we don't have internet here. But what we do, like 347 people is following her. I have about 600 and so. If I send out a tweet right now, I might say, in St. Louis with a room full of patriots plotting the course to save America, then I'm going to send that out. Now, if I send it out like that, that's not a very good tweet, but 600 people might see it, and if they retweet it to their followers, you don't know how many they have. Some might have thousands and thousands. So it has the exponential effect of growing and getting our message out. That's important. That's one of the ways Darren knew about what we were doing in Indiana. He was following us on Twitter. If you have to put a hashtag on your tweet, and I might ask Darren or somebody in this room afterwards to be the point person, the Twitter person, to teach you guys how to do it. Our best person in Indiana is 75 years old, woman that's housebound. She cannot do anything to help the campaign except tweet. She tweets all day long. But a hashtag is simply a pound sign, and the things we did, we had hashtag retire Lugar. So if you're following that, you can trend down, and whoever's following retire Lugar, that picked up steam with our campaign. Another one was hashtag IN for Indiana Sin, SEN for Sin. You could do hashtag MOSIN and start following those, and there's thousands and thousands of people doing. The biggest one for conservatives is TCOT, top conservatives on Twitter. You follow that, you post, you might post today, I'm here learning about how to take a campaign and defeat whoever you want to put in there, and put the hashtags in and send it, and it's going to be seen by other people. All of a sudden people say, I like what they're doing in Missouri or Indiana. They'll jump on board. So we actually outnumbered Lugar's people eventually by about a 10-to-1 margin, where early on he had campaign and staffers, which actually is illegal, tweeting for him, and they were beating us up on the message. When we got done, we outnumbered them to the point that they just quieted down. One of my best tactics on Twitter during the campaign, as we were nearing the primary, I said many times every night, tonight I'm in Benton County, and this one was my favorite, putting 10 yard signs for every windmill in honor of Lugar's false fallacy of wind power being a viable energy resource. And then they tweet back, you're an idiot, there's no one in Benton County, why would you go there? I said, yes, I am an idiot, and tweet that back. The next day I'd say, I'm in Ohio County, get maybe population 5,000. They said, you're an idiot, no one's down there. Well, I did that for about 5 nights. Then the word got out that they were sending their people and resources to those counties because we were never there. We were in the counties that mattered, and we won. We won 90 of the 92 counties. And the 2 that we didn't win, we only lost by 4 points. So we were sending them on a wild goose chase. So not only was that smart, it was a lot of fun. If you're on Twitter, then once you get on there, you ought to have a deck, like TweetDeck, so forth, and then you can follow these hashtags, and it'll make sense. Just get on it, try it. Trust me, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But that's how we won, is we set aside any territorialism, I don't think I like that guy in that group over there. And we united and we won. Now, a funny thing that's happening, actually it's common sense, you would expect this, we got to like one another by and large. We have picnics together, we eat lunch. I'm being invited, as are others, with this group over here says, you're an expert on whatever, Agenda 21. So that leader goes to that group and talks, and vice versa. Indiana's network is strong, and after this race, it'll live on to another one. And if Indiana can do it, and they did, Wisconsin did it, they won, went to Texas, they won, and I'm going to argue, and my contention is the spotlight's on Missouri. What can Missouri do? Show me what you can do.
Come on.
Thank you.